Okay. Ready? Okay, we're going to call this meeting to order. We have to speak loud tonight because our speaker system's not working, so hopefully we'll get that fixed. So could everybody please stand and salute the flag with me? Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Are there any changes to the agenda?
I have none.
Council, do you approve of the agenda?
Make a motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded to accept the agenda.
I didn't catch the first, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Horn,
Aye.
Councilman Atkinson,
Aye.
Councilman Ramirez, Mayor Pro Tem Singleton,
Aye.
Mayor Ramsey.
I also vote aye.
Sorry, I just want to let you know, make sure that you still are using your mics because the people who are watching at home on video need your mics to hear you.
We're getting light, you just got in here.
Okay, we'll go to item number 2, awards presentation, appointments, and proclamations. Number 1, Westlands Water District 2022 Westside Scholarship recipient Michael Mayfu and Emily Walker, presented by Elizabeth Jonathan of Westlands Water District. And I apologize for our meeting today. I ran late. I was running late all day today on everything, so.
That's all right. Things happen, but thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council, for, is this on? I want to make sure.
I don't think you can hear it in here, but the people at home
Okay,
can hear you.
wonderful. Well, I want to thank you all for the opportunity to come and present some of our scholarship recipients. Michael is in the audience. And I'll give him a few minutes to talk up here, but Westlands Water District every year has the opportunity to award scholarships to students from 10 Westside high schools based on community service, education, and overall outstanding students. This year, we had a lot of wonderful students apply, and that made my decision very, very hard. So, but what I can tell you is the scholarship recipients coming from Coalinga were amazing students, and Coalinga should be very proud of the students that that come through the high school institutions here. And so I did want to take a moment to acknowledge Michael and his outstanding application, and for him to be awarded one of our scholarships. The other recipient was unable to make it after all. Michael, I don't know if you want to come up and say a few words.
Hello, I'm Michael Mahfoud, if you didn't know already. I'd just like to say thank you to the City Council and the Westlands Water District for honoring me with this scholarship, and that's all. Yeah. Thank you.
And so we will be opening up scholarships next year as well, and hope to receive a lot of applicants from Coalinga and have the opportunity to award scholarships for a couple more students next year. Thank you again.
Thank you. Michael, you make us proud. Thank you very much for representing Coalinga like that. Doing a great job. I think you take after your dad a little bit. He pushes Coalinga a lot. All right, thank you. Okay, next we're going to take a break and go outside for a second, and we're going to have the presentation of the new fire truck from the fire department.
I'm gonna say something real quick.
Okay.
We will go outside, but it's here. It's finally here. After supply chain issues and COVID hit the shop where it was at, so there was delays in putting it together and receiving equipment. It's all in the past. It's here. And I just want to take this opportunity to say thank you. Thank you to council for your support and your understanding of the need for this piece of equipment. Thank you to Marissa, city manager, for her support and understanding. Jasmine helping me with the financial stuff. He's not here today, but Captain Long was a one-man apparatus committee. He did all the work himself. Blood, sweat, and probably tears into this truck and purchase. So just wanted to say thanks to him, and then the community, because honestly, without the passing of Measure J, a purchase of this magnitude would not have been possible. So thanks for the community for your support. So without further ado, the guys are excited to show her off, and they're waiting for you outside.
I just want to say that I think what Greg failed to say is that Measure J is coming up for sunset. And so when we put together the financing for this, it will be paid off within 5 years prior to the sunset of Measure J. And so I think that's important to recognize as we come forward as a council, as a community, as staff, and look towards our future needs. And so we want to make that known that we put together a very aggressive financing plan so that something of this magnitude gets paid off with this current sales tax measure.
Thank you. I was gonna climb it today, but they told me later. I wanna do it.
Manny, can they get a picture with the council before you guys go outside?
Hey, Matt, where's,
Manny, can you grab Jim real quick? Can you grab Jim real quick? Okay, stay here. Sometimes it's hard to wrangle them all.
great
Can
job.
we get a picture real quick?
You know, I don't wanna be rude, but you have no choice.
Ron tried to when I went to the bathroom. The speakers are working again. The speakers are working again.
Oh, we're back on. We're live again. Just one for the mayor, huh? See, I even tried to be late like you. Just waiting outside. I'm gonna wait. Wait till they text me.
It's working. Test, test.
Oh man.
He's the head of COG, Tony Boren. Is he giving him back? Okay, he just stepped out for a second. Okay, we'll go ahead and reconvene this meeting. We're on section 3, citizen comments. This section of the agenda allows members of the public to address the city council on any item within the jurisdiction of the council. Members of the public, when recognized by the mayor, should come forward and let them identify themselves and use the microphone. Comments are normally limited to 3 minutes. In accordance with state open meeting laws, no action will be taken by the council this evening, and we refer to staff or follow the report. Citizens' comments submitted in writing by the city, to the city clerk by 5 o'clock on the day of the city council meeting council and included in the record. However, they will not be read. Is there anybody like to address the board?
Mayor, council. Ooh, it works now. Cool. All right, so I'm going to talk on items number 6.1 and 6.2. I apologize, I won't be able to stay for the discussion, but I did want to thank Dan for coming out here. And even though I'm going to be completely against what he's going to talk about, I love, and he's used to that by now, but I absolutely love listening to him speak, so I'm going to miss that, and I apologize. I have a major concern with natural gas taking another 50% increase. Natural gas rates were raised last year, December 2021, by 45%. That would make this a total of 95% increase since December 2021 if this goes through, costing residents an average of an extra $19 per month on this increase. How are people on a fixed income going to afford these increases? I know just over a year ago, Coalinga was looked at as a very affordable place. They did a whole study on it, and Coalinga was like one of these places that, wow, it's super affordable place to live. I don't think we're going to be able to say that with all the increases in fees, water, gas, sewer that we've been having. My city bill has went up about $40 per month. That comes out to around $480, give or take, per year extra. People like me may be able to afford it, but I wonder about how it's going to affect people that are low income, people that are seniors, people that are on a fixed income. Where are they going to come up with the additional money? Now you're talking another $19 a month. That takes it up to around $60 a month. That's going to be an increase since the last time. So that's going to be equal, instead of $480, it's going to be like $720 a year. And I know a lot of people that are on government assistance, and a lot of people that are seniors that have, you know, like I said, a fixed income, a lot of employees that are not being able to keep up with inflation right now. It seems like that when public agencies need, you know, when they have bargaining units, they're able to go out and they're able to bargain for their increases. People that work at McDonald's, people that work at Starbucks, people that work at 90% of the rest of the businesses in town may not be so fortunate. So they're behind the ball right now. They've been behind the ball. And I just really think we need to figure out a different way rather than raising, you know, the rates. And then on 6.2, the continuing water crisis, you know, we understand that this isn't going to stop. The feds and the state can't come up with good plans, and so they're going to continue to send our money and our water down the delta instead of towards the ocean, instead of towards us where we can use it. It's very unfortunate that that's the case. We are in a water emergency, but I am convinced that those smart meters are the key to this. Those smart meters, the one that I was lucky enough to get, have showed me many times when I've had leaks, many times when I'm using a lot of water. And I know that I've come before this panel lots of times and said, hey, this needs to be an emergency to get those things out there. You should, in my personal opinion, you should spend whatever money it takes immediately to purchase those. Immediately get them to all these houses. And just, you know, the savings is going to be right there. I personally believe that people don't realize how much water they're using. Those little devices are going to allow the city to see how much water is going to be used in real time. It's going to allow people to realize how much water has been. Just when I was gone on vacation, I got an alert, and I think it was by time zones changing that my app may have messed up, but the second day that I was gone, it said I had an 800 gallon leak, and that it was 30 gallons an hour or something like that. And I was like, wow. So I immediately sent someone to my house. They couldn't find anything wrong. They were like, you know, nothing's wrong. So I contacted Sean. For the next 2 days, it kept saying that. And the third day, it went back and said, nope, you didn't lose any water. I don't know why the app did that. But the point is, the app made me aware. It made me aware that there was an issue, and I was able to jump on it immediately. And please, please, please do whatever you can do to get those apps out, because I really believe that that technology right there we can use. And that's all I have for tonight. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you, Nathan. Anybody else? John?
Well, hello. Great to be down here. I'm John DeWardy. I'm running for U.S. Congress, as a Republican. I'm a farmer and businessman from Modesto, and it's an honor to be down here and address your city council tonight, and the people of Coalinga. I'm running on a platform of fighting the high cost of living. We've got to get water on the farms. We've got to drill American oil. We've got to take care of the working families in the Central Valley. I live in Modesto. I run my business in Houston, California, right outside of Ceres. And this new district, when I saw its lines, I was so excited because this is a working families district. From Lathrop up in the north part of the state, all the way down here through Coalinga is kind of the southwest corner. We haven't forgotten you. I've been down here 3 or 4 times in the campaign already, and I intend to be fully engaged. There are no big cities. You're nobody's backyard anymore. This city has Madera, Chowchilla, Los Banos, Coalinga, Kerman, Ceres, parts of Turlock, parts of Modesto, but you don't have to worry about somebody getting so many votes in Fresno that they don't really need to talk to you. I'm looking forward to talking to you. I'm looking forward to taking to heart the issues over water, the issues over American energy, the issues that bring jobs and successful business to the valley. And this gentleman's comments on his thoughtfulness towards families that simply don't have an alternative to pay these rising costs of living. I know that this isn't something the council imposes haphazardly. These are costs being sent down from the state of California. The California carbon tax, the big green initiatives up in California have been voted for by too many times by Central Valley politicians that want to make their party happy but can't make their residents and constituents happy. It's my first time in office. I've been building my business in Duarte Nursery. If you see little almonds or pistachio orchards with Duarte cartons on them, that's the company I've been working at since I was 22 years old. That's my family's business in Modesto, California. That's what I'm leaving to go serve for a couple years over in Washington, D.C. to see if another approach, a more take it to the mat, hard-hitting, these are the facts on the ground in the Central Valley. This is what we need, and I care a lot less about party politics and big government initiatives and career political ambitions than I do about delivering for the Central Valley and coming back to live here as a businessman, as a farmer, and as a father and a husband when I get done. So thank you for seeing me tonight. I've handed out my card quite a bit. JohnDuarteForCongress.com is my website. I try and be very easy to get a hold of. Call me if you've got concerns. I want to be here for the Central Valley working families. Thank you very much. I'll field questions if that's okay. If not, I'll just get lost.
Any questions for? Okay.
Thank you very much. Ron, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, thank all of you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to address the board? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to our number 4, public hearings. Number 1 is adopt resolution number 4106, vacating a 2-foot public street easement property located at 840 Chanel Avenue and Public Street right away. Sean?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is a public hearing for staff's recommendation that the council approve resolution 4106 to vacate a 2-foot public street easement located at 840 Chianti Circle. The property owners have constructed or did construct a solid CMU block wall at the back of the existing public sidewalk with the intent of incorporating the 2-foot unimproved dirt area between the original wood fence and the sidewalk along the property yard into the backyard landscaping. The city does not need the unimproved 2 feet. Sometimes there's a misunderstanding or, in terms of where right-of-way ends, where property lines are, especially when folks are building fences. And when we see these little 2-foot strips, they think, oh, it's my property, and the back of the sidewalk sometimes, by rule of thumb, could potentially be the property line. But when we have certain standards for street right-of-way, it can sometimes extend beyond just the back of the sidewalk based on the size of the road. And so in this case, that 2 feet was actually the city property, and in conversations with the property owners and working with Marissa, we felt that there was no drastic impact to basically abandoning that portion of the easement because we weren't maintaining it. It was just it was basically a weed patch. There's no landscaping in that area. And so they had done this significant improvement, and so we felt that it wasn't necessary. So the applicants did submit the proper, not really an application, but they did cover the costs of the city to undertake this, for the city engineer to prepare the documents, for us to post the hearing. So there was additional funds from the applicant to take care of this. So there was no additional cost to the city to process this portion of the application. This is just the process we go through for abandonment of right-of-way. So as you remember from the last meeting, we were setting the hearing date, and so today is the hearing date, and this was a noticed public hearing, and the property was posted appropriately as well. So with that, if the council has any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. If not, it's the public hearing. Take any comment and recommending approval of the resolution.
Council, anybody like to say anything before I open the public hearing?
Yeah, real quick. Is it the cost? There's no extra additional cost, and who will own that 2-foot stretch of property?
So they own it. So typically with right-of-way, owners typically own in fee, which in fee is the underlying ownership of the property to the center line of the road. So if we go way back, when we abandoned, the last time we really did a major abandonment was on Grant Street when we built the Dollar General. There was a street that went through, an extension of Grant Street that went right through that parking lot. We consolidated those parcels because the city had owned those parcels. When we abandoned the Grant Street right-of-way, the property goes down the middle and it reverts back to the property owners on each side. So typically it's owned in fee. So if we abandoned all the streets in town, it would just go to the adjacent property owners.
Okay, if there's no other questions, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Anybody like to say anything for or against this item? Go ahead and address the council. Not seeing anything, we're going to go ahead and close the public hearing. Okay, next we'll go to item number 2.
Mayor, we need to vote on the resolution. Yeah.
Okay, that's right, we got to do it each one. Okay, council, what would you like to do?
I'll make a motion to approve as read.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been motioned and seconded. Roll call, please.
Councilman Horn,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Singleton,
Aye.
Councilman Ramirez,
Aye.
Councilman Atkinson, Mayor Ramsey.
I also vote aye. Thank you. Okay, we'll go to item number 2, which is also a public hearing. Introduce and waive the first reading of ordinance number 853, city-initiated zoning text, number ZTA 2201, amending the planning and zoning code related to accessory dwellings, ADUs, and floodplain regulations and density bonus. Sean?
Thank you. Mayor and council, we're introducing and waiving the first reading of ordinance number 853. This is one of the steps, not only due to state legislative changes, but also in terms of moving forward with our cottage home program that we have grant funds for, to establish proper regulations to be able to enhance that program as we start developing that particular program. The state legislature enacted accessory dwelling unit legislation in 2017, 18, and 20 to reduce regulatory barriers and costs, streamline approval, and expand potential capacity for these ADUs in response to the California's housing shortage. A summary of state laws and changes are summarized and attached to the report, so we won't go in depth into that. The state ADU law does preempt local ordinances, and cities must implement these laws with the limited exceptions. So basically our existing second dwelling unit ordinance is obsolete at this point, null and void. So we're having to basically defer to the state law in order for us to process applications, review requests for ADUs. So with the implementation of this ordinance, this will allow us to have a guideline and guidance in terms of processing applications for accessory dwelling units. So I have provided some information on what an accessory dwelling unit is and then what also a junior accessory dwelling unit is. Most of this ordinance is almost verbatim, not necessarily verbatim, but pretty close to verbatim of state law. So it's very consistent. It has to be consistent with state law. This document has to be submitted to HCD once the council approves it to ensure its consistency. Staff worked with Self-Help Enterprises to develop this ordinance. And so I do have some information on here regarding the ordinance amendment And the reason why there's information regarding floodplain regulation and density bonus is just addressing the term ADUs in those two sections of the code. So there's no substantial change to floodplain regulations or density bonus. It's a rather just an update to include ADUs language into those particular sections of the code. So with that, for respect to time, if you have any questions in particular to the ordinance, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions for you. But there are some highlights we bulleted in the staff report, but if you have any questions, please let me know.
Any questions from the council? Okay,
One thing.
Okay.
It says RMD zoning designation with alley access. So are we saying that only houses or residential areas that have alley access can put on an ADU or a JADU?
That is what we have. That's what we have proposed in the code to be consistent with the cottage home program and some of the challenges with the way the law is written in terms of the allowances for garage conversions and parking requirements. It becomes very challenging in certain housing areas where you don't have access, side yard access, anything of that sort. Because junior ADUs can be attached or basically part of the existing house where you can maybe convert a bedroom of a house into a separate efficiency unit, but triggering parking requirements with garage conversions, what that would look like in a neighborhood with no access to an alley, where garages are typically in the alley. If you convert that, then you may lose some of that visual impact in terms of converting garages. What would that look like if you converted garages?
But can't any residential home have an ADU by right? I mean,
No,
whether they
not,
have
not
alley access or
necessarily,
not.
no.
I just have
there
a
are
problem saying that only if you have an alley access you can put one of these on. I don't think that's right.
Can't you get around it with putting a breezeway?
You could put an ADU in the back of a lot. The concern is, and the restriction, or the concern is when you do that, where are they going to add additional parking? Because they already meet, like for a single family residential subdivision, a 2-car garage covered and having uncovered offsite is required. So if they have to add additional parking, where is that additional parking going to go? And putting the unit on is not necessarily the challenge. It's the additional parking requirements without putting those additional parking spaces onto the streets.
Okay, so let's say let's take a street like Hillview Lane. They have huge backyards. Now, because they don't have an alley access, they cannot build an ADU on their properties.
No, they would not be able to.
There's got to be something else we can do for that. To say that only certain people, if you're in Kalinga and you have access to an alley, you're the only ones who are going to be able to build an ADU, while if you're on Hillview, or most of the higher end part of Kalinga, you can't build an ADU because you don't have alley access. I think there's got to be some way that we can find a way around that.
I mean, that's definitely an option. We did have a second dwelling unit ordinance that allowed for those additional units to be built. It's a matter, I guess the big question is, how do we address parking and how do we address garage conversions of units? Because an ADU includes the ability to convert a garage. So if you convert a garage, like a 2-car garage, you're going to have on-street you'll have parking in front. But the challenge is how do we leave the appearance of not impacting the entire neighborhood and how it looks by converting the garage and enclosing the garage.
There's a few houses here in town, I know, I've seen it, where they leave the front exactly the same and they build right behind the door. They just seal that door so it can no longer work. That way it doesn't change the appearance.
That's something the council could consider if they'd like.
Because there's a house on 3rd Street, I believe, the garage is made into.
Well, there's a lot of what we call it, legal conversions.
Yeah, what does it
town.
do to anything that's there now?
What?
This doesn't change anything that's there now, though.
It doesn't change anything there now. It's what the regulations would allow.
Right. Anything built from now on, exactly. But I'm kind of in agreement with Adam on that. It's like most of these, units like that you're gonna put in your backyard would probably be family or something like that, so, it's kind of hard saying you have to have an alley to me. Now, if we, is that against this, is that one of the
No,
state
it
law
does
ones?
allow you to have those exceptions because the law does allow you to establish areas that you allow ADUs. So it doesn't have to be just blanketed throughout the city and where you allow them. So if the council would like to open it where any residential property could do an ADU, we can do that. And we'd have to look to see, and I think depending on how substantial the change would be, whether we could bring it back for the second reading with some of these amendments.
We couldn't make any like substantive changes.
So we'd have to bring it back. Okay. So if there's, so we definitely want some feedback now, because then we can renotice it and we can bring it back to the council for approval. That's not a problem at all.
We could continue the public hearing.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
Let's just
Make
continue.
changes, bring it back?
we haven't
Okay.
even opened the public hearing yet, so.
No, but we can open it, we can continue it to the next meeting, and then you could take comments if you wanted, but otherwise we'll just continue it, and then we can bring it back.
Okay. Okay, we'll do that. We're gonna go ahead and open the public hearing now. Is there anybody like to say anything about the ADUs or the junior ADUs? Okay, if not, we'll go ahead and continue till the next meeting on this ordinance. on
Well,
this.
Mayor, we want to continue the conversation to make sure staff is getting what direction the council would like in terms of changes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to change?
So right now, we can basically open it up, so not have the limitation on alleys in particular, so we can definitely address that. Is the council comfortable with garage conversions for any garage in town?
I am.
Yeah, I think if we're gonna do something like that, I'm sure that's an open up, yeah. I think so.
Any requirements for the garage conversion?
I mean, not really. I mean, I look, we have a rental crisis in this town right now. There is 0 rentals on the market right now. And we have tons of people who want to move here, especially from the Bay Area and San Diego and LA, so
And not only that, it would just,
go for it.
not only that, it would just ease the high amount of cost that a house is going for, so it'll ease kind of, the property, so.
Now, does that include, let's say, for instance, you've got a street that's got one driveway in the front. All the rest of them don't. Everything's through an alley access. Does that still include being able to put a driveway in your front yard as long as there is one in the neighborhood?
The driveway, the way we have our driveway policy is that it has to lead to a garage. So it can't just be a driveway for a parking slab in the front.
Now, does it have to be an actual garage, or can it look like a garage? Which is the same thing as putting a wall in front of the door so you can't see what's inside. Would that be the same thing? Just curious.
Well, I mean, if you're talking about trying to build an accessory dwelling, is that you're basically being able to
Right.
build an accessory dwelling
And still be
unit?
able to put parking if you're gonna take up, if you have an alley and you take up your parking that's in the back, would you be able to add it to the front? And still make it look like a garage, but
That's up to you guys. I mean, in terms of putting a driveway in, the goal is not to create parking slabs for just being able to park in the front yard. Especially if there's no
some
driveway.
people do it, they'll expand out their driveway or move the driveway or put it as secondary for RV.
Yeah.
Most of them have an RV parking.
I kind of think we're setting ourselves up for failure to a point, because if we let any garage be built into a room, people will be doing that and then putting rooms on there, and then they add more people to the house. And then we're just gonna get overwhelmed with parking, and we're gonna have all kinds of problems.
Well, and also, now you have a difference, now you have a J8, you have a junior 8 accessory dwelling unit, which is attached, but these are individual living units. These are not adding a bedroom, like converting a garage to a bedroom. You're literally converting a garage. It has to have separate access. It cannot come from the house. It has to come from like
It
the
would be
side
like
door.
mini houses.
What?
It would be like a mini house.
It's a house inside of a house, essentially. And it would basically be a junior ADU is what that
And
would
then you could rent
basically
that
be.
out.
What?
Then whoever owns it could rent it out.
They could rent that separate unit out, yes.
Now, could they do that? And all the areas, you can't, the whole area in Coalinga is not able to be rented, is it?
It would, based on the conversation right now, that would be the case. You'd be able to do that. Any garage could be converted to a second unit as long as they can meet the criteria, which would be just off-street parking.
So I could build this huge house right here and put a whole bunch of rentals in it.
You can only have up to 2. There's limitations on how many ADUs you can have. You can have an ADU and a junior ADU, that's all you
I
can
would have
have.
to be against that.
For how
because-
many square feet?
I'm sorry.
I'd have to look and see exactly in the ordinance what the square footage is, but there is square footage requirements. The state dictates minimums and then there's maximums.
Yeah,
But they've got to meet other requirements in terms of setbacks, lot coverage, other things too. It's just the unintended consequences of garage conversions without providing parking is vehicles on the streets.
And we have a lot of parking problems already.
So, I mean, I'm just putting it out there, but it's up to the council to decide, how we handle whether you only allow, a 2-car garage, half of it to become an ADU. Maybe so then you maintain at least some type of parking. But I think if that's what you guys want to look, I can bring back some language that might address the garage conversions, if that's what you guys are looking at. I can double check on the parking restrictions to see how the parking would look if we converted the garages. Because garage conversions are permitted in this, but typically it's gonna be on a detached garage. Because it's most alley access, you're gonna have garages off the alleys.
Right.
Because I mean, like, what's different than being a family home and you have you have 5 kids and all of a sudden all of them drive. They're all gonna have a vehicle. So the parking, no matter what, if there's a junior or mini, their parking's always gonna be a problem because there's families that have 5 kids and all 5 kids drive. They have an extra family in there. They all drive. So I just think that the parking, it's just gonna be a problem no matter future or whatever. I think that's, the more the family kids have, the more probably vehicles they have. So, if they're being able to do it, we could do it, I think.
I just have a problem with having houses or doing it like that because people build a house and they don't expect somebody to build something on it and then rent it out to somebody next door because we're gonna have code problems because you're gonna have renters right next to somebody that's built a really nice house, and then you've got 2 renters over here that's not taking care of their grass, and there's weeds all over the place, and you have a nice house right next door to it, and it just brings down the whole community.
So would a middle ground between what you guys want, from what I understood, what Adam was saying, wasn't necessarily a garage conversion initially, but maybe like a tiny home that you purchase and you live on Hillview and you want to add it to the backyard, some sort of detached ADU, and then allow garage conversions for those that are detached from the homes, but garages that are attached to the primary residence couldn't be converted?
I mean, if it could even the mayor, Ramsey said that, if we could put an ordinance where they have to keep up the beautification.
We have them now and they don't do it.
Well, and the ADUs aren't necessarily going to create some of that problem because these are accessory dwelling units. They're not primary dwelling units. So they're going to be accessory to the primary residence. So it's either going to be attached inside the residence as a separate unit, but attached to the existing residence, or it's going to be a separate detached residence. So the primary residence is still, most likely going to be responsible for maintaining the property. And as we do the cottage home program, it's going to be designed really to be able to fulfill the alley access, or if we decide that we can put these in the back of homes, they just have to have their own separate access. So a property would have to be able to provide adequate access to that, separate from the primary residence. So it's got to come from the front of the lot. So if you build it in the back, they got to be able to access it from the front and get to the back without going through the primary residence. Same thing if you convert a garage, it's got to be able to come through the side door, not through the home itself.
Exit and entrance, basically.
Yeah.
We got a question?
Does this have to change anything with the zoning, single family, now multifamily?
No, state law is not recognizing that. They're basically allowing second units to be on any residentially zoned property. No, you can't. It's not single room occupancy. It is their accessory units. So like say you have, like I guess a perfect example is there's houses on South Coalinga Street that have basically all their alley loaded that back up to that industrial area. And they have an additional bedroom in the back. I've gotten requests to convert that bedroom to an accessory dwelling unit, and then basically they would access that unit separately from the residence. So it's a separate dwelling unit. So it's got its own kitchen. It's got to have all of the requirements of like a small efficiency apartment. So it's not like renting bedrooms out. It's got to be separate living quarters. So there's a lot of requirements in terms of what that actually is defined as. So it's basically just saying, hey, here's a home, and we're gonna either have a detached unit added, or we're going to convert a bedroom or a certain space to a livable unit. So they're not connected to the home by entry at all. It's all exterior.
Well, I guess my question was just these contractors that are fixing up all these homes right now, would they be able to come in, remodel the home, add a dwelling in the back, and now they turn around and sell a house?
Yes.
Residential with two?
Yes. Yeah. And this has all come through the state. This has all come through the state housing laws. That's basically requiring us to implement these ordinances. So.
And it would have to have a restroom, everything would have to be.
Yeah.
within
Kitchen, restroom, bedroom, everything. Yeah.
The only thing I'm having a problem is with the garage. You know, putting up one, I don't have any problems with the ones in the back, but I would have a problem with the ones in the garage. So is there any way you can work on something like that?
Yeah, I can kind of highlight the garage conversion sections of this, and we can kind of discuss that at the next meeting if you'd like, and go through that.
And then we could tweak it a little bit there at the next meeting too, couldn't we? Or
I'm
with
sorry,
your,
what?
we could tweak a couple of them.
Yeah, I can bring back some examples, and I think as long as the examples are there and we choose one, I think we can move forward with the ordinance going to the next steps.
Yes. We do need a motion, though, to continue the public hearing to August 18th.
Okay, one quick thing. Do we have any cost estimates yet for the JADUs, the junior ADUs?
We don't. We're actually currently working with an architect. We're working through the insurance issues on the contract, and then we'll probably be bringing a contract to the council for an architect firm. We didn't get any responses from our RFP that went out, so we reached out to some firms to see if they'd be willing to work with us. We did find a kind of a custom home builder out of Fresno area that is willing to kind of work with us to see if they can put together some plans for us. So we're kind of in the negotiation phase right now, and then we're hoping to bring a contract back relatively soon to get that underway. But we don't have any estimates yet.
Okay. Well, I'll make a motion to continue the public hearing until 18th.
I'll second it.
Okay, roll call, please.
Councilman Atkinson,
Aye.
Councilman Ramirez,
Aye.
Councilman Horn,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Singleton,
Aye.
Mayor Ramsey.
Aye. Okay, next we'll go to item number 3, introduce and waive the first reading of ordinance number 854, city-initiated zoning text amendment number ZTA 1904, amending the planning and zoning code related to in-home family daycare facilities. Sean?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is somewhat of a housekeeping item, and I feel like a broken record tonight, but this is based on reaction to further state legislation regarding large family daycares. This has been in effect for a while, but we're just getting the housekeeping done on the ordinance end. So under existing law, the Child Care Facilities Act, the State Department of Social Services licenses, regulates family daycare homes. And a small family daycare home, which may provide care up to 8 children, is considered a residential use of property for purposes of all local ordinances. Previous law authorized city and counties to either classify large family daycare homes, which may provide care up to 14 children, as a residential use of the property, or to provide a process for applying for a permit to use the property. So The city of Coalinga currently requires a conditional use permit for large in-home family daycare facilities. However, with the passage of Senate Bill 234, this changed the requirement and now treats large family daycare homes as the residential use of the property, and for the purposes of all local ordinances, which basically expands the size of residential care child facilities. And due to this change, we made amendments to the ordinance to remove the requirement for a conditional use permit, and essentially makes it a permitted by right use. But essentially, it's a residential use, and what comes with that is that the city cannot require business licenses, any special permits to operate a large family daycare in a residential home.
And that's by state law.
Yes. So essentially, we can't require a business license or any other. We did keep some regulations in place, so we can essentially puts us in a code enforcement mode if it becomes a problem. So we still do have our regulations in place. We just can't require any special permits for those types of daycares. So it's a pretty quick and easy ordinance change. It's just a matter of changing how we allow permits.
Who monitors daycares?
Typically, the state Department of Social Services would normally license large family daycares. My understanding, I don't even think they license up to 14 now. So it's essentially a residential use, just like us living in our home. Having a large family daycare is the same as if we just enjoy living in our home. Yeah, so we still have regulations. You can't have, jungle gyms in front of the house, has to be in the back. You have to have a certain amount of space for kids to play. So there are still regulations in our zoning code. It's just a matter of we can't regulate the permitting for those.
Okay.
What about can we do anything about it? We just can't, that's it, it's the law and that's done.
I think this came out of somebody actually applying. We tried to get them to comply with our local ordinances, and they basically said, hey, this is out of date now. So we can try to force them, but if they ignore it, there's really nothing that we could do about it.
Scary.
Okay, gentlemen, what would you like to do? I have a motion?
We need a public hearing.
Oh,
So the
I'm
ADU is gonna be a childcare.
okay, we're gonna open the public hearing for this on daycares. Anybody like to say yes or no, or say anything about it? Okay, we'll go ahead and close the daycare. We'll close the daycare public hearing. Gentlemen, what would you like to do?
I'll make a motion to set it as it's read now.
There's a motion, is there a second?
I mean, we've got to second it. It doesn't really matter anyway. It's state law.
Roll call, please.
Very reluctant second.
Councilman Horn,
Aye.
Councilman Atkinson,
Only because I have no other choice. I have to vote aye.
Councilman Ramirez,
No?
You're gonna be sued
Mayor
now.
Pro Tem Singleton,
Aye.
Mayor Ramsey.
Aye, vote aye. Okay, now we're gonna go to the consent calendar. We have 13 items on the consent calendar. Is there anything that council would like to pull?
10.
Number 10? Okay. I'd like to pull number 7. Is there anything in the audience anybody like to pull? Okay, I'm gonna talk about number 7, adopt resolution number 4107, supporting the Fresno County Council of Governments, approved Measure C renewal expenditure plan and implementing guidelines. Tony, would you like to say anything? This is Tony Borum. He's our head of COG. He's our executive director.
Really, I have nothing to, I'm just here to answer any questions. You may have followed what had happened with our expenditure plan with the City of Fresno's 11th hour changes. The good news is that resulted in about $4.5 million additional dollars for the City of Coalinga So that's probably the most significant change. What you're going to find in the measure is that it provides our local agencies with maximum flexibility. The money will come to you. Some of it is mandated for streets and roads. Rehab, that's the highest priority for the voters. But there's also 18% in there for local choice, where you guys can decide what you want to do with your money. You want to spend it on buses, you want to spend it on active trails, you want to spend it on rehab. It's your decision. But we're optimistic that it's going to go to the ballot. The Board of Supervisors supported it, as has the Transportation Authority and the COG Board. So in spite of some of the 11th hour shakiness, shall we say, we're pretty optimistic about it. So I believe it's a good thing. 51% of the money is mandated to be spent on maintenance, street maintenance, rehab, and repair, which is what the voters say they want. So again, 80% plus support for the that particular issue. So we're
After many
optimistic.
meetings, huh?
Many meetings, 18 months, and anyway.
Okay, any questions?
Just thank you.
Any questions from the audience for Tony? Okay, thank you, Tony.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Item number 10.
Yeah, quick question on the funds that's showing that it comes out of the grounds and maintenance. They have that extra 20,000 to use?
Yeah, it'll
And
get
are they
moved
and are
from-
they cement or metal or?
So basically what we're requesting is we have money in the grounds and maintenance fund, which is the ground repairs and maintenance fund. But in order to cover the cost of all of these, we would pull the money from the major machinery and equipment fund, which has 20,000 in it. The reason why this item is being brought to you is basically full transparency to the council that we did during the budget process ask for a new lawnmower, and that's why the 20,000 is in there. But as we've been having discussions, we're able to go another year without that lawnmower. And in terms of trying to do some of the improvements, that's how we're trying to utilize the existing total budget to be able to make these purchases and do the improvements of these locations that we're looking at. And so we're just looking to move that money out of there and into the grounds repairs and maintenance to cover the cost.
So doing the numbers real quick on the high side, it's about 14,100. So is that including the labor and the cost of the high number on purchasing these?
No, it's just moving that over because we have some other just little nuance material costs that we can use as in that same fund as we do this, whether it be small concrete pads, those types of things for the improvements. We have rock and everything else that we're doing in those locations.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is there anybody that'd like to make a motion on the consent calendar?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar as read.
I'll second it.
Okay, roll call, please.
Councilman Horn,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Singleton,
Aye.
Councilman Ramirez,
Aye.
Councilman Atkinson,
Aye.
Mayor Ramsey.
Aye. Okay, motion came out unanimous. Okay, ordinance presentation and discussion of potential action items. Number 6, natural gas rate study and consideration of 1-year increase. Dan?
I'll introduce Dan while he's coming in. So this item is informational to provide opportunities for questions, discussion, and follow-up. However, for the August 18th meeting, based on the present gas market information, the council would be recommended to approve an increase in natural gas rates by 50% effective September 1st, 2022. This increase will be for 1 year only, allowing gas rates to return to their present level September 1st, 2023, until staff and the city council have taken further action prior to that date. I'm going to go ahead and give it to Dan to kind of provide kind of some background and why we are here.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Mayor and City Council. I was appreciating Mr. Vosberg's compliments earlier and impressed that someone can make me feel good. At the same time, he's essentially disagreeing with, the recommendation. A skilled communicator. I'll make my presentation short. Mr. Vosberg's right, it's a big increase. But the natural gas world in which we're working and buying natural gas is a volatile commodity market. So in my presentation, I'll get into that as I'm moving through this. This is probably 10 minutes. So let's see if I can do this by 7:30. So again, as I shared with you when I was here in November, the gas system has no debt. It's in great condition in that way. Rates, even though substantially increased, will still be lower than PG&E, and I'll show you that if you haven't already seen it in the study. The study is in the council packet. Your gas system's operated safely by your own people, and equally important, you, City Council, have oversight, not the Public Utilities Commission of California. That is a great thing for Coalinga. So you've heard me say this before, natural gas rates were decreased in 2009 and 2011. The city had 10 years of very, very low costs. Wholesale gas cost increased last winter. We did the 45% increase. At that point, as I'll show you in a few minutes, gas costs looked like they were going to decrease, but they did not coming out of winter. So historically, I'm on the reasons for increase slide, Larry. Historically, we've had, as I said, increased high wholesale cost. PG&E cost have been increasing in general, but now we have a new component that has been somewhat of a surprise to the city, and that is PG&E passing through the California Air Resources Board's greenhouse gas cap and trade surcharge. They deemed that the city should be paying that charge after several years, and so that charge has been imposed on the city, and that is now an additional cost that's about $1 in MMBTU. It's not a small cost, but it's not as big as the cost increase of wholesale gas. Moving to the wholesale gas market, as of November 2021, this is the slide I showed you in November of 2021. We had gas prices rebounding because of COVID. We had that freeze in Texas, which demonstrated how volatile gas prices could be. And then we had at that point that gas pipeline explosion. And so when you look at the curve in the next slide, again, I'm showing you the curve as it looked last year. We see that peak, which was last winter, and the projections at that point, and you can see the projections at that point for this coming winter was gas at $5.50. But now as we look at the next slide, you see the new projection. And so for this winter, we're looking at gas at $10. Since I made that slide, the wholesale market has dropped to about $9. And you can see now, in the next winter, we see prices dropping again. So why is this? Russia invaded Ukraine. Natural gas is exportable by liquefaction, by liquefying it to liquefied natural gas. And it's in demand now because of the world price of natural gas. Storage inventories in the country are low, about 10% below average. That's bad news for this coming winter. We need gas storage for winter supply across the country. Low hydro, which is no secret to us here in the West. It's hot this summer across the country, and producers and transporters are hesitant to invest in gas infrastructure because of the environmental concerns around a fossil fuel. So all of these things together are what are causing this huge spike that we're seeing right now. So moving on, the next slide shows the cost components overall for each fiscal year for the gas enterprise in Coalinga. And you can see the initial increase in fiscal 22. The PG&E costs are in red, and that's the impact of the cap and trade surcharge being passed through. And that continues forward. You also see the spike in 22, the year that is over now. That's looking back at last winter for gas costs, and then the larger spike in fiscal 23, and then again dropping back down. The next slide shows Coalinga's utility cost components. So you see the cost in November of 21. With that first increase, the average monthly cost for gas at $32 going to $49 this year. That's over 12 months, so that $49 is going to be higher in the winter and less in the summer. As Sean mentioned in his introduction, in this case, what we will be proposing is an increase that ends, it sunsets exactly a year from now. So staff or with me will be back here with you know, a new recommendation at that point. So moving on. That's the typical profile for a typical residential customer in Coalinga, peaking in the wintertime, 360 therms. If you're the median residential customer in Coalinga, this is what you look like. And I'm showing you this for the purpose of the comparison to PG&E, which is the next slide. So what I did very carefully is I looked back at what a customer in Fresno would pay PG&E over the past 12 months, $728. A customer in Coalinga for that same usage profile, same volume of gas, $352. However, because cost went up, they should have paid $458 because the 45% increase last November wasn't enough. And I'm doing this out of fairness to the comparison. Now for the next 12 months, based on the rate increase that we're talking about now, the 50%, that customer in Coalinga will pay $585. Probably the most important point I can make with this slide is the $585, when the period is over, won't be compared to $728. It'll be some higher number for PG&E because PG&E adjusts its commodity costs monthly. So if gas does cost $10 a decatherm in December, that $728 will be boosted a lot, and for other months as well. So it's not that we're proud of being having to raise rates that much, but the good news is that the city is doing a good job. The system is being operated at costs lower than your giant competitor. Let's see where we are. Next slide. This is the rate table, and it's showing the existing rates, 12/1/21, the 50% increase, which will be proposed for September 1st, and the rate and the resolution will have integrated into it the decrease a year later, back to the existing rates. One comment about natural gas compared to sewer and water and refuse is it is exempt from the Prop 218 noticing requirements. So City Council can approve the increase by resolution. It makes it easier. Next slide. So as I mentioned, the rates are proposed to be set after 1 year. Action will be recommended for City Council at the next meeting to provide an opportunity for questions, discussion, and any changes. One thing I haven't mentioned yet, that will be my recommendation to the city and to City Council. For years now, we've been buying gas on the monthly spot market. It would be better now to move to structured gas purchasing. And so what I will propose with staff's support is structured gas pricing such that you're buying gas in a layered format 1 and 2 and 3 years out. And even though it may look expensive 3 years out, to still do that and thereby avoid the big price spikes like we're seeing right now. We're not trying to beat the market, we're essentially just averaging things out.
Didn't we used to do that when you first started? Isn't that the way we did it?
A very long time ago.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
But
I
then
thought,
gas
I thought we
was-
were still doing that.
Gas was so inexpensive for so long, it just didn't matter. And that has changed. Wow, 10 minutes. So that is the end of my comments. Again, this is for discussion tonight. And do you have any questions?
I have one. It sounds real good that we have a stop date on this, but what happens if gas is still up high at that time?
We're having this discussion again with the rest of the world.
Because we can't guarantee that it's going to go back down again. And
Well, you can guarantee that we'll be having the discussion again.
Right. Yeah.
No, we can't. City Council, one,
I got a question for you. What would be the difference of doing a smaller rate increase over the next few years to get up to that number that you actually need instead of doing it all at once?
Well, with natural gas, unlike water, which you'll hear Sean talk about, we know we are going to incur these costs this winter, and the rate increase covers the actual cost this winter. We don't know how much the gas is going to cost in following winters. The risk would be that if we didn't purposely collect enough money this winter, we were more in the hole next winter because the world continues to be in energy turmoil. So just one comment. So the basis for the 50%, and I didn't say this yet, is to preserve the fund balance at about $1 million, which isn't a huge amount for a natural gas enterprise.
$1.4 million, I think it was, wasn't it?
I'm sorry.
How much do we have in excess right now?
Jasmine?
How much?
What's in the rate study? Actually, I have it.
Because even asking people to conserve a little bit would probably help too.
But it's
With
natural gas. We're talking about heating houses and.
In the home though.
I think you can't really.
If we're overstocked and we already have it, that would prevent us from having to buy as much if we're using less and string it out a little longer and just buy it when it's cheaper.
So, Dan can speak to this, but I think the way that we purchase is that we monitor the market, and as the prices increase and fluctuate and decrease, we try to buy an optimum rate. We hold, for the winter based on, historical demand and historical use, so that we can buy the best purchase for our residents, so we can give them the bigger bang for their buck, because it is something that cannot be
Stored.
stored, or I think you can't really conserve it. I mean, you're asking people to not turn on their heaters in the winter. Like, you know, you could kind of conserve water, but I don't think you can conserve natural gas. I mean, they have to cook and do all that, but.
Did you say we buy it monthly?
We buy monthly market. We buy gas at monthly market prices.
Okay.
That's what we've been doing. But I'm recommending now that we move to structured purchasing. You lock in the price in advance. You don't pay for the gas until you buy it. So it's not like we're having to invest in it.
But that's not, I mean, we're not gonna buy what you're talking about. That's gonna be a little bit, right, before we get to that point where we can make the yearly purchase. In other words, we're not gonna be doing that in the next month or two.
Well, that's another suggestion that I would make, and thank you for bringing that up. Because of the uncertainty with this winter, to start to lock in some prices, layer in, actually I had that in my slides and I skipped it, to layer in purchases for this winter as we move toward winter to avoid even further volatility that may happen. So we can buy a month at a time, for example. We can lock in the price for a month at a time so that the rate increase that I hope you will approve is adequate. And, you know, because if the market went totally crazy, I don't really want to be back here again, and you don't really want to see me or anyone else asking about this again. Back to the fund balance question. The projected fund balance at the end of fiscal 22 was under $900,000. And with the increase, it's just essentially held at $1 million at the end of fiscal 23, the year that we're in now. So it's just holding ground.
So that is the minimum amount that we need to hold as fund balance in any enterprise fund. We can't, so I don't know if Dan elaborated to that. So you have your general fund, which is your governmental fund. That's your discretionary fund. You can do whatever you want with it. You could hold as much as you want in it. You can hold as little as you want in it. However, your enterprise funds, which are your water, your gas, your sewer, your sanitation, they operate much similar to a private business. And so they're a for-profit, actually not a profit to break even. So private businesses operate to maximize profit. So we're in the government industry. Our enterprise funds are considered business-like funds when it comes to generally accounting principles. So what we do is we want to provide the level of service for the most efficient cost. And so that's what Dan is talking about here, and that's what Sean and I have kind of worked with him on that, is we want to provide our residents with the highest amount of service level with the lowest amount of cost. And so when we're projecting these things and Dan's purchasing on behalf, we're trying to purchase out of, and then also kind of going into economics is that supply and demand. So if you're purchasing now, like Dan is saying, and we're locking in those rates, demand is very low right now. Let's say we get down into the winter and demand is high. Obviously, the cost is going to be high. And so because it's a business-like fund, it's a dollar for dollar transfer to the users of those services. And those are our residents. So does that make sense? And like simply put, kind of.
Yeah. Now, a 50% deal for the average consumer, that would be about $13 per household, right?
It was
Or
on
was
that.
it more than that? $15?
Yeah, the difference between now and 33 to 48, 15.
It goes from
Yeah.
10.15 to 15.23, and then in a year, it goes back down to $10.15. That's for regular monthly charge.
To reiterate one point that Jasmine was making, the gas enterprise, the refuge enterprise, water and sewer, they're all businesses that are operating within the city outside of tax-supported functions that you provide. So the goal in operating them as enterprise funds is to be efficient with spending, but at the same time set rates to cover cost. And I say that in the context of concern over people who are on fixed incomes. The responsibility here is to operate these enterprises responsibly. Those other issues need to be handled someplace else and need to be handled. But in the case of the enterprise funds, we have got to keep them whole. In the case of natural gas, we don't have bonds or debt service coverage or bond covenant requirements. That's different with water. So we do have that benefit with natural gas.
Okay, any questions for more?
Is that going to change our gas service charge our baseline? Is that going to change that too?
Not the volume, but the way...
No, I mean just baseline to have the service. Is that going to change that too?
Well, the way I set it up, and you could have input on this, was to increase all three rate components. You can see it in the rate table. All three rate components, the 50%. Another approach would be to leave the fixed monthly cost the same, but then we would be increasing the other components more, because we need 50% overall to cover the projected cost.
You're just evening it out between them all, so that way it's not high on one end versus the other.
That's correct. It's spread out evenly amongst both the fixed monthly charge and the volumetric costs for gas.
And then just something also to add, I've been your finance director for 5.5 years. Want you to know that the gas enterprise fund was the richest fund when I got here. So we had reduced the rates once prior to my arrival. And so we have been chipping away at that reserve, and rather than financing projects that Sean has to do, which he can talk about it too, they have some plans for some capital improvements that need to be done within the gas enterprise infrastructure. But we had been purposely drawing down, and so rates were purposely lower for residents as opposed to the annual expenses for the fund. So we were providing a subsidy for the gas enterprise fund purposely because we can't carry, because it's an enterprise fund and it's a business-like fund, we can't carry a high reserve in it. Otherwise, it's not taxes, it's user fees. And so we're basically taking the residents' money and holding on to it and using it as our pooled cash, and we can't do that legally. So that's why we were chipping away at it, and took us about 5 years to bring it down to $1 million, which is the minimum that we want to be at.
So they're not taxing any rollover?
Enterprise funds aren't called taxes, they're called user fees. They're subject to Prop 218, which is what Dan is doing and he's been hired to do. We don't call them taxes, they are user fees. They're similar to your water bill that you would pay, like I pay. I live in the city of Fresno, I pay the city of Fresno a water bill. It's a user fee and it's a consumption fee and there's a baseline fee. City of Fresno provides me sanitation service through the city, and so I pay them a fee, and then I get my gas through PG&E and electricity through PG&E. So Coalinga is very fortunate, and it is in a unique situation where the city has acted as an agent and a provider of natural gas, whereas if the city was not doing that for its residents, the residents would be directly paying that money to PG&E, and that cost would be much, much higher because we buy as a city and as a government agency at wholesale price. And we pass that wholesale price on to our residents. And so that's important to recognize. I know nobody likes to, have their rates raised, but it is important for the residents to recognize that we have been providing a subsidy, and that information is all available online on our financial information. You can purposely see that every year that the Gas Enterprise Fund was operating at a deficit because we were purposely drawing down on those high reserves. And so had that not been the case, these rate increases would have happened a long time ago.
Okay.
So you say 1 year?
We don't need a motion tonight, it's just informational, right? Correct. And they're gonna bring this back to us. So do you guys have any more questions? Do we have any questions from the audience? Thank you, Dan. Everybody's so quiet now. Okay, next we'll go to number 2, water update on the City of Coalinga USBR 2022 CBP allocation and City Council consideration of further water conservation measures due to further deepening drought situations. Sean.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Tonight, as the mayor mentioned, staff's recommending that the City Council take action in terms of additional measures to further the city's conservation efforts due to the recent communications from USBR and their ability to deliver limited water supply this water year as the drought persists, including authorization to purchase additional water to meet the needs if available. I'm going to provide some background to the council. In terms of, the city has been in constant communication with USBR, as you all know, are the providers of the city's only source of water as a federal contractor, and this is regarding the 2022 CVP water allocation. As the council may recall, in May, staff presented to the council that the city's allocation went from 25% of historical use to a sole public health and safety allocation, where council gave direction to staff to submit an amended allocation based on what the city felt was attainable goal for water use. A letter was sent to USBR to that effect, requesting 4,100 acre foot. Subsequently, USBR followed up with a letter resulting in an allocation of 2239 for the 2022 water year. And this is based solely on a public health and safety calculation that they utilize, not necessarily based on contracted water. So based on the remaining allocation, and if we remain in status quo, the city is estimated to expend its allocation of water by mid-September. Staff was on a recent call with the USBR, who held that the 2239 acre feet is all they'll be able to provide the city. And if the city continues to take additional water beyond the public health and safety allocation, that essentially the city would be taking someone else's water. They advised the city there was no additional water that could be provided to the city at this time, and that the city needs to take additional steps to not only curtail water use to avoid going over its allocation, but continue to start looking for additional water in order to meet that overall demand that the city is going to have. In addition to the letter from USBR on the 26th of July, staff spoke with USBR district staff about the issue and the possible concerns related to going over its allocation. So as the drought persists, the city's ability to increase its allocation with the USBR has reached an impasse and essentially being told there's no additional water that they can provide. This is being held to all of their contractors from pretty much in their region, south, anything, because all of the water pretty much that we receive starts in Shasta. And so, unfortunately, there's no additional water that the state can provide us at this time. However, I will clarify some recent conversations of probability of some potential additional water from the Bureau that we're working on right now. So if no action's taken, as I mentioned, we're expected to run out of water essentially by mid-September. And as we pull from the aqueduct, it's not going to be our contracted public health and safety water. It's somebody else's water in that canal. So the 2022 water year started with 1 day a week watering. So what I'm going to do on this discussion is kind of give you a breakdown of where we're currently at. Staff has some recommendations, but really it's kind of a menu of options for the council to consider. In working with Larry, we tried to estimate. I emphasize that these are estimates in terms of what potential savings we could get from changing watering days or restricting water in certain outdoor areas, rural residential, commercial, industrial. So these are things that we looked at. And so staff kind of put together options, as you can see in the resolution. There are different options, and then those options can be tweaked if the council so chooses as well as you move to kind of take action. So we started, basically with 1 day a week watering up until the month of May, where it was increased to 2 days per week. This resulted in some savings compared to this time last year. However, as previously described, more extraordinary measures must be taken in order to not exceed our allocation given by USBR. Staff has prepared the following measures that indicated their approximate usage reductions if the council chooses to take action tonight. Please note these figures are estimates, which I mentioned, so I won't repeat that. So in the attached resolutions, there's 3 options that the council can choose from, and as I mentioned, can customize as you see fit. Staff feels that option 1 is kind of a good approach to take, coupled with, as we talk later, about the potential of having to look at and purchase additional water. So domestic water use is classified as residential and multifamily homes. There are 3,450 active water services in this classification. Primarily, this class is your single-family residential. So staff is providing possible conservation measures that are estimated and very optimistic that may reduce water usage. So as we look at, before I get into that, is where we're looking at in terms of our deficit of water. We're starting at around 1,700 acre feet of water that we're looking at in a deficit in terms of what we have to capture based on what we potentially could, in fact, recapture or may have to purchase. So when we look at possible scenarios on the residential side, you're typically talking about outdoor watering. We can encourage folks as much as possible to curtail and really try to reduce their water usage indoors. But when we look at the baseline winter numbers, there's not a lot of area to improve on the baseline. So when you look at baseline winter numbers, you're obviously not watering as much outside. So we have options here from residential 1 day a week watering, which would reduce 1 full day a week, and that could potentially save about 150 acre feet in that particular scenario. No watering of basically front yard turf. You could potentially save an additional 200 acre foot if we reduce that. Basically no outdoor watering at all, except for maintaining your trees and your plants and keeping them alive. In terms of multifamily, looking at no ornamental turf watering, and then you also can look at rural customers and no ornamental turf watering for rural customers. So really it's just however you want to slice it in terms of how we want to restrict further outdoor watering. In terms of commercial use, there's very limited approaches to try and reduce commercial use. When we get our public health and safety calculation, you get 70% of your historical unconstrained use. But for the most part, the only place that you can conserve that 30% is either reduce production for a commercial development, or if they have landscaping, reduce the landscaping. But it doesn't always equate to 30% of their usage. You know, take for instance the garlic plant. They don't have a lot of landscaping, but if you try to cut them 30%, that would further reduce their operational capacity. So that's very challenging. So who takes the burden of that? Unfortunately, residential does, because they have to make up for that, because it's very difficult to have that reduction and monitor it. Same thing with industrial use. So industrial use is very similar. We have the oil companies and we have other industrial users. So if we go to no ornamental turf watering, it could potentially save 10 acre foot. And in reality, is what I brought up in the staff report, is that the governor has an executive order that ornamental turf should not be watered. It should be, all sprinklers should be turned off on ornamental turf, according to his executive order. And so that includes commercial, industrial, and institutional. And so as we get further, we'll explain that. But basically you have two options. You have, you know, and you can see it's not a huge savings with industrial water users. You know, no ornamental turf waterings, maybe a 10 acre feet, and 30% reduction just for, I mean, and that's starting September to the end of the water year, which is the end of February, like 18 acre feet. Institutional accounts are the schools, hospitals, and churches. And no ornamental turf watering could potentially save 30 acre feet. So those are your non-necessary turf locations. In terms of Pleasant Valley State Prison and the Coalinga State Hospital, this is where there's been some challenges, and we've been bringing, this has been a huge discussion with the Bureau, as I mentioned earlier, receiving 70% of their historical use, which is a 30% reduction. They have gotten to the point where they can't conserve anymore. They've told us they can't conserve anymore, which means who picks up the 30%? The residential sector does. And so we have been talking with the State Bureau of Reclamation on these arguments that if we can't push them to further reduce, we're going to lose out on that 30%. And so there have been discussions with the Bureau and support to potentially backfill that 30% that they're going to use to allow to lessen the burden on our residential customers. So in terms of possible reductions, as it correlates to the resolution, option 1 could save about 190 acre feet, option 2 about almost 300, and option 3 would be 373 acre feet. So with these measures in place, this could extend our water supply beyond the estimated September 15th date, possibly late October, early November. Most likely with just the reduction on watering may get us out of September. So with the potential shortfall, taking into account existing conservation measures, water use trends, potential health and safety adjustments, as we mentioned with the state hospital and the prison, and basically taking additional conservation measures, we're expected to have a shortfall of approximately 1,000 acre feet, which the city will need to purchase water in order to avoid exceeding its allocation. So in terms of some ongoing efforts, USBR provided a long list of operators in the Central Valley project that may have water available at some market-based price to help the city's remaining water needs for the year. The effort has begun to find water, and preliminary results, which is now the August 4th. As of now, we have been in conversations with potential folks that may have water available, but we haven't gotten into those details at this point. So the resolution, if council chooses to adopt, not only provides a menu of options to further water restrictions, but also asks for authorization to purchase the needed water, and I cringe when I say this, up to $2,500 an acre foot, which easy math could be upwards of $2.5 million. We've heard numbers from $800 an acre foot to $2,500, $2,000 an acre foot. So with that authorization to move forward and at least be able to have the ability to have those negotiations for potential water, and it's just one of those things that we'd have to come up with that $2 million potentially to cover the cost of that additional water, which everyone knows would be coming back with a potential rate increase to cover the cost for that $2 million. One of the things that we're looking at is, one, are we able to further reduce that $1,000 acre foot and reduce that gap? Well, we're going to see, hopefully, if we can implement more conservation measures, maybe we can shrink that gap. But we will have to have some type of payback of that potentially 2 million. I'm throwing that out because if it's 2,000 acre foot, it's going to be 2 million if it's 1,000 acre foot we have to buy. And so that has to be borne by the ratepayers. I think we can spread that out, and Dan's really good about when he puts together the rate structure, it would be treated like a capital payback. So if it's 2 million, we would establish a rate structure, a tiered rate structure that one at least addresses the higher water users to pay their fair share of that increase and that additional cost of water. But it does equally have to be shared, not only across the residential customers, but commercial, industrial, and our institutional customers as well. And so that's kind of where we're at. And so we're continuing to be aggressive in terms of working with the state. We're talking to, legislators, assembly members. We're working with USBR probably on a daily basis. They are actively working and trying to find additional water. But I just don't see a way around of getting additional water without a cost. The drought is persisting, it's getting worse. But our ultimate goal is to try and conserve, try and find water, but to really try to push that September date further and further into the winter. But we're not expecting a windfall of water coming available to us that's going to make us whole without having to potentially purchase it. We have a lot of items in the works right now and trying to find water, but we don't know that cost yet.
We can't drill water wells, that's right now state law.
It's not that we can't, it's just you're a year and a half out and it requires, pumping wells we'd have to directly put it into the water plant. And with that, we're not sure on the quality of water. You gotta do water quality testing. The water board would have to approve that injection into whether it goes into the canal or whether it goes into the plant itself to be able to treat that water, and whether we can actually treat that water with our current treatment process.
Now, how do you regulate the apartment complexes that the residents do not pay for the water? The owner actually pays for the water. How do you regulate that?
I think I have to verify. I think on the water meters for the apartment complexes, I think they're on individual gas meters, but I think they're on, I'm seeking Larry's.
They have individual water meters on some of them too, but the residents do not pay for the water. The owner of the facility actually pays for the
It's
water.
still built into the rates based on the number of units though, right? On the way it's for the.
Yeah, but how do they regulate it without notice or
Well, for the
anything?
apartment complex, typically it's gonna be the outdoor watering that we're regulating, but they do, the way it's set up for billing on the units is based on how many units. Cause I know for sewer, it's charged based on the number of units.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when you ask about the apartment complexes, what aspect are you asking about?
How do you get the residents to restrict their use too? Because it's no different than living in a hotel. When you're not paying for the water, you're gonna use the hell out of it.
Yeah.
It's the same thing at an apartment complex. How are we having them regulate or restrict their water use?
Well, the short answer to what you're asking is you can't. But the one thing that the city can control is how much water they're putting on the grass around the buildings. But the way the apartment complexes are metered for water is a 4 or a 6 unit building may have 1 meter. So you can't. But they will have a price signal that's sent to them through the new rates.
Yeah, that doesn't sound right.
Well, that would be between the landlord and the tenant, yeah.
But you can't legally just raise the rent, even if it's to cover the water costs.
Well, in our case, we're running a water utility and not what landlords cost.
I'm just talking about can I make a comment?
Yes.
As a landlord, Mary Jones, as a landlord, my tenants have a contract because that's the way I do it. And I don't believe, unless Mr. Lawyer can straighten me out, probably not off the cuff. But you cannot raise rent more than a certain percentage, and even that has to be, you know, a timely thing. So we can't, our tenants don't pay for their water because of the way the meters are set up. We say this is about how much you use, we just, you know. So a significant raise is gonna slam people like me. I don't know if I'm the only one or what, but there's no way for us to recoup that lost money. You can't raise the rent because of the controls you have. You can only raise it once in 12 months or something like that. So if we raised it, which we did by 5% or something, you know, back in December, we can't raise it again until the next time again. And then again, it can only go for a certain amount. You can't just raise it to what you want. There's a lot of controls out there.
So, but I think the way that would work, like Sean is saying, is they're not gonna charge the tenants for overusing the water, they're gonna charge the owner of the property. But so, that's what I mean, so that's on you on how you recoup your money from the tenants. You can't raise the rent every month, but you're gonna have to get that next tenant that moves in, you gotta pay a little bit more. I mean,
For like 10 years, so they're not moving.
no, but then, I mean, you have to raise the rate at a timely manner, like you said, every year or whatever you gotta do, because that doesn't fall back on the city and it doesn't fall back on the people that live there. Like you said, if you go to a hotel, you're gonna take 30-minute showers because it ain't your water. You're not concerned about who else's water you're using. You're getting free water. So it's gonna be the same thing with your tenants. They're gonna take showers all day because they know I have a flat rate right here that all I'm paying. She's gonna have to eat the cost of that on the back end of it, which isn't fair for you because you're not using the water, but that's that tenant thing. The landlord and tenant, when they don't include the water separate or the utilities, you guys have to eat that on your own and try to recoup that at a later time, though.
Okay, Sean, in that, option one, is there oh yeah, it's right here.
And I can go through that if you want, because I want to make sure it's very clear about what type of recommendations are in option one. So essentially, option one goes to a 1-day-a-week watering schedule. So basically, you're even in your odd days, we're removing one of the days that you're watering. It also further reduces the hours that you can water, because then the inclination is that you go to 1 day, you're just going to water twice as much, and we're not going to see the savings. So we've reduced it. And then for the commercial industrial watering and institutional is addressing the governor's order, which would just be the city communicating to all the larger entities like the schools, the college, the parks district, and then any commercial development, commercial business that has turf, to let them know that there is an executive order and that grass should not be watered. I mean, this is, you know, and I'm bringing this because this is my responsibility to come to the council and be transparent. These are tough decisions. This the system has been like our life for the past year and a half, and we're basically we've been trying our best to really fight for this city to get additional water, and it's not coming. And so that's why I wanted to provide the reality to this, but the council has a choice on what we'd like to do. If we want to buy more water, we can try to buy more water. But we just don't know, you know, September 15th hits, what's going to happen. But for commercial, industrial, basically no watering of turf. And then all other watering would be on 1 day a week. And then institutional would be the same.
That includes apartments, right?
That would include, the apartments would be 1 day a week.
Because there's some apartments that water's running in the.
Well, and then adding to that is increased enforcement.
Yes.
Okay, so really being out there and making it a high priority to be out there and enforce the water restrictions. And also almost like a all hands on deck kind of approach where people that are in the field, if they see it, they need to identify it. So those are kinds of things to look at in terms of being able to address this water situation in order to try and reduce it. We've seen it in 2014. We saw a drastic reduction. We've already seen a reduction. The communities, you know, for as a whole, I mean, we're still like 10% less than we were last year. I think in our preliminary numbers for July, we're over 10%. But with public health and safety means, I mean, when you think about it, no watering outside, right? They're doing just enough for folks to eat and drink the water, flush their toilets, stay sanitary, take a shower. But we're trying to see what we can do to balance that and make sure it's fair based on that number, because that number is pretty strict. Because for residential, it's 55 gallons per person per day. And we're almost just under double that is our current average, just for public health and safety. So baseline is almost twice of what that is. So just inside, we're using more than that.
Okay, I have one question behind you.
Oh.
Just for calculations, there is an exemption for turf if it is used for sports or play, children playing on it. So the schools and the rec department would still be using all that water, or they would have permission to use, at this point, they still have permission, because I read through this before to see where those, water
All of our
things
new
go.
daycare centers too, huh?
It's only in the areas where they would be actively playing. So like that grass area that you see in front of West Hills College, that frontage, like that wouldn't
It
be
would go,
considered,
yes.
yeah.
But on the, like the elementary schools and all that.
Like
all
their
that
football
grass would be-
fields and
yes,
stuff like
football
that,
and
yeah.
all that.
So what basically what's the downplay on that? Because I went to a park and rec meeting, and I told them about that the fields were going to waste. They said that the city is basically nailing them with the water usage. That's what it was said. And, you know, I will put it out there. One of the members contacted somebody right away. They got an answer. I don't know how they did that, but that's what was said. Because how does that work? Where if citizen concern goes to a rec meeting and is concerned about the grass being, because they're not wondering because we're gonna get stabbed.
Discussion we've had with the Parks District and the college, and we're meeting with the school on Monday, is prioritize your waterings, and we give extreme flexibility to those larger water users, this college, the school, and the Parks District, because there's so many controls that have to operate just to be able to water once a week, that we've given them flexibility. So when we're on 2-day-a-week watering, they can water on all 4 days that are available for watering, as long as they don't water that particular location more than twice a week. Because we recognize that they can't water all their facilities on a 2-day-a-week water schedule. So when it comes to a 1-day-a-week water schedule, they're gonna have to water it in 2 days.
Also, in my conversations with them, it hasn't been regarding the watering restrictions, it's the cost of the water that they can't afford. So they've chosen to reduce their water usage because of the cost of water.
All right.
It's a significant amount of water to water those ball fields.
Yeah. So basically, they're the same as us.
Yeah, they still get charged the same amount.
You know, as I'm sitting back listening to the discussion and Sean present, staff is giving you options for conservation. And on the other, and also in your resolution is a request for approval to purchase essentially expensive water. But as we are likely about to engage very actively in shopping for water, we don't know how much water we're going to be able to find. So you could choose the first option or another option, but a scenario that could play out is after a week or 2 weeks of dialing for water, we find out we can't buy it at any price, in which case you'll need to have this discussion again. Because there's this balance between conservation and buying expensive water that people will pay for later. So as you're thinking about that, conservation is critically important because the Bureau wants to see that. Something else I want to add is different from last year. They are dead serious this year. There is no more water from the Bureau after that allocation is up. There may be a tiny bit of adjustment. Last year, they gave us more water to start, and then they gave us a little bit more, and then Avenal gave us some water. That's how we made it. This year, it's a lower starting point, and there is an extra water from Avenal, and I mean, the bottom line is the reservoirs are lower. So the situation is very serious, and the solution has to be some combination, a healthy combination of aggressive conservation and hopefully being able to buy the water at whatever price that water customers will then pay for over the next year. Unlike gas, it's different. The water cost can be stretched out. So that's what you're weighing with the decision tonight.
Thank you. Question behind you.
When you have watering hours, people can turn the faucet on, and if they're willing to pay, they're going to get whatever they can get, whether it be 5 gallons or 500 gallons. That's not helping with the conservation. I suggest for people who are PGA green crazy for their lawns that you start pushing the tuna can 1/4 inch watering schedule. In that, you set out an empty tuna can, turn on your sprinklers, and when that tuna can has a 1/4 inch, that's when you shut off. That's all you need to maintain your lawn. Thank you.
You said before that the state hospital and the state prison have indicated that they are done conserving, or not done conserving, but they have conserved as much as they possibly can, supposedly.
Yeah.
Now, when I drive by the state hospital, I look and I see about 40 coastal redwoods that are the greenest ones in all of California. How are they getting those things so green and saying that they can't conserve? I go down Washington and I see our coastal redwoods that are hanging there on life support, and then I look at the schools and they're dead. They're not even alive anymore. They're completely dead, and they need to be cut down. How can they possibly tell us, and I've seen their landscaping too, and it's really nice as well. How can they possibly tell us that they cannot conserve anymore when I go over there and I see these things?
It's a good question. And, based on our conversations with them, I don't think they have a separate landscape meter, and Larry can probably correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think they do. But they would be held to the same requirements, and we would definitely monitor those too.
Is there, I don't know if this is possible, but can we tell them that they cannot water their outside, whatever trees, outside landscaping?
They shouldn't be by the governor's order.
Well, it's only ornamental turf. They have no turf as far as I know.
Oh,
It's only, so you're basically talking trees and shrubs and ground cover. So that's the challenge, is being fair and equitable. If we go saying you can't water outside, and that's why I wanted to clarify something in my resolution too about rural customers, just making sure that we're equitable with whatever decision the council makes for outdoor watering for residential and commercial, to make sure that we're consistent with the rural residential. But on that note, yeah, I mean, it's gonna have to be consistent with whatever regulations you put in place for anyone else. But these are,
Right,
the prison and the state hospital are our two largest customers.
Yeah. I mean, we can't just make regulations for them alone, right?
No, but almost kind of de facto, because they're their two biggest customers. I mean, you could implement certain things on usage on volume.
I mean, costs, like.
Well, you're gonna
once
see.
you
You're
pass
gonna
this-
see that.
Once you pass this amount, you're gonna get paid.
You're gonna see that next meeting.
Okay.
Next month.
And also, what, so we look at options 1, 2, and 3, and we see what the potential savings could be: 190, 298, and 373. You said we have a deficit right now, of what?
Probably 1,000.
1,000? I mean, that's just a Band-Aid, really.
It's gonna be, you're gonna be back in the same boat, because we can go with option 3. But regulating that out here, that's gonna be the issue. We can all agree, yeah, we're gonna go to option 3, we're gonna flatline, water this, not that. But at the end of the day, those that want green lawns are gonna water their yard. And most of it will probably be done at night, when there is no monitoring.
Well, we would definitely have to restructure how we monitor, and we've done that in the past, so we could do that, yeah.
I agree, because that's gonna have to be done, because that's the get around, is I'll do it when they close. When there's nobody out, I'll water. Because you're gonna see the green grass is gonna stay green. Because they're gonna want their green grass. Unfortunately for me, my grass is dirt brown right about now, because I don't want anybody taking pictures. City council got green grass on his yard, so I just let it go. But I mean, it looks good, and I agree. I would say go option 3, because we need so much. And at the prisons and at the state hospital, they may our biggest customers, so we gotta charge them like they're our biggest customers. When you go over your amount, you gotta pay extra. And we'll see what they wanna make adjustments.
Well, and that's where the tiered rate structure would come in, is addressing, as we used to have tiered rates, then we went back from tiered rates, but tiered rates would address your higher users. You would see, just like kind of way PG&E kind of does their rating, once you kind of get to a certain kilowatt hour, that price per kilowatt hour goes up. It's gonna be the similar thing with water. And so we would be able to address that, and including having to, essentially buy water and be able to pay that back. And so we would structure that to be equitable, hopefully not have major impacts on folks that don't use very much water, and then have a larger impact on folks that use a lot more water.
Question. The fines that were sent back, discontinued, if we were to have kept that this last whole year, where would we be sitting at?
Oh,
with money
we would've kept
towards,
it all the way
with money
through?
towards possible fines on ourselves
I think,
as a city?
I can't remember how much it was. Do you remember how much that total credit was when we, on the drought charges? Probably $300-something thousand.
277,000.
There you have it, 277.
If I might.
That was
add
just for the
something.
first couple months, wasn't it?
That was only, how long was that, Larry? I heard your voice.
I don't remember. I'm just glad it was over.
Yeah, it was probably like three months,
So
yeah.
probably close to at least half to 3/4 of $1 million, depending on.
I mean, if we would have kept it in place all the way to today and had it in place, it would be probably $1 million. It could have been.
I mean, I think as your finance director, obviously you all know I have an opinion. I think that, that would have been a more equitable option for you guys, because, I know nobody likes to pay. I don't like to pay. I have my own checkbook at home. I manage your checkbook. But it's kind of all about, I mean, yes, it was, set up to quote unquote penalize without calling it a penalty. It was called a charge, but you were charging those who were the excessive users of the service. But then again, you sit in the hot seat, so we do what you tell us to do. But now in this case, you will be charging everybody.
And there's potential other ways to look at that. If you want to look at,
It goes back to the whole, it operates as a business, it's got to break even.
We might have to switch back to it for a little while, just to see. It's the only way we're gonna get them to restrict.
and there's ways
A
to
little bit.
simplify it too, where we can,
You didn't teach them anything. You didn't teach them that, hey, you're overusing, you're taking somebody else's water allocation because you're excessively utilizing the service. It's all about bare bones, it's about needs. I mean, I think when I came on board, my question was, it is a need or is it a want? Because we were poor, we needed to have poor. Well, with regard to water as a community, we were in an emergency situation and we needed to do something.
So to take us back to last year, wholesale water at $2,000 an acre feet translate to a water rate of $7. So if we go out in the market and buy water that expensive, the pass-through rate to customers would be $7 per 1,000 gallons, whereas your existing rate is in the $3 range. It's a huge number the value right now of wholesale water. Again, that's why conservation is important, because if they don't save it, customers are going to have to pay for it.
I don't know, I think it's cheaper than bottled water, because you can go down to the watering station over here and get 35 gallons for $7 versus 1,000 gallons for that $7. It's easier just to conserve it, so we actually have it.
I would also like to add something. If
Could we go back to the,
You can come down there if you like.
could we go back to
This is a
the
triple
fines that
tag
we
team,
had
so-
before? Would that help
I'm
us
sorry,
if
what
we
was that?
went back to the fines before? How we
There's
had it
that's
before?
definitely an option. I can be honest with you, and I was reluctant to bring that up considering what occurred last year. But that is definitely an option. We can try and simplify it if that's how we want to address it. I think we've been talking with Mario. It's probably subject to Prop 218, which we'd have to go through that. But it may be something we can introduce, and Dan, you can clarify. But it could be introduced with the rates, the potential rates, to be able to try and bring that back. Because the reality is, we're going to have to. I mean, we're going to do our best, but buy water. Because even with the numbers, you can see that, it's going to be difficult to get to that 1,000 acre foot, even with conservation efforts being highly aggressive.
I would not call it a fine, I would still call it a drought charge, it's not a fine, we don't want to have it be a fine, it shouldn't be, shouldn't have that connotation, it's obviously, it's an excessive use charge, and it's a drought charge, it's not a fine.
We wouldn't have to have a 218 if we called it.
I think we
we
would.
didn't
Mario
last time.
Mario can clarify.
I don't think we did last time, did we?
Yeah, we're talking about, like, kind of in my head, like 3 different things. 'Cause you're talking about raising the rates, then you're talking about, do you punish in a way excessive users? Then we may have a whole separate issue of we're just going to have to buy water, which applies to everybody, right? And so it's going to depend on what we ultimately do. You're going to have to do a 218 for the rates.
So we're gonna have
Period.
to have 1 and 2 just so we can continue with 3.
Yeah,
'Cause
I
if
mean,
we can't buy
it could be a combination. I mean, it's the rate thing's going to happen, and so there's really no sense in making some kind of distinction of should we do it or should we not do it if we're going to raise the rates anyway, because we're going to have to. Might as well be safe legally and do it all at once. But there's just a lot of options, and
And there are a lot of communities in their drought contingency plans and their urban water management plan that institute drought surcharges. Because what happens is when you use less water, your fixed costs still stay the same and you're selling less water. And so that's why we've seen this historically. And unfortunately, we've had to go through this multiple times where during times of drought, everyone's saving water, but say, hey, thanks for
Cost us
saving,
more.
but we're going to raise your rates. And so we've had to have this discussion to clarify and for folks to understand why that occurs. And, Dan's very good at articulating that on how that occurs, but you still have fixed costs to run the water system. And as you sell less water, you make less money. And so that's what triggers. And, and just like this year, we're going to be selling a fraction of the water we normally sell because our allocation's less. So, and then we're going to have to recover purchasing the water at an astronomical cost compared to, Dan, you know what the cost of water or total cost of water is? I got asked today.
The current USPR contract?
Like what is the cost of water? We can pay $2,000 for wholesale water. What will we pay from the Bureau?
Oh, it's about $300 an acre foot.
So, even if we paid $800 at the low end, it's more than double for the water cost.
Can I make a suggestion as your finance director? And it would be, we lived, I was in charge and I was sitting in that hot seat. It would be that, we would follow through with Prop 218 for raising rates, with the stipulation of kind of, implementing the drought charge. I think we could do it through resolution like we did last time, right, or an ordinance.
you couldn't do a drought charge for everybody without a 218. The reason we were doing the surcharge last time was on excessive users, so you can't do it.
No, it wouldn't be on everybody, it would be on excessive users, because we would put conservation measures in place now.
Right, so we would, if we were gonna go back to that, we would just kind of do it.
Revolt back to where we were, in the summer before we went back. And so it would be that we would put this into the drought charges can start quote unquote penalizing with them. It's just basically, I would call it a surcharge, it is. It's just an, I guess you either fly economy or you fly first class, kind of like that, you know? If you want excessive water, you gotta pay a price. There's a reason why we all fly economy, because we don't wanna take that luxury, you know? And so, and then Dan would continue with Prop 218 in the meantime, so that we don't have time lost, because Prop 218 is a process, and he has to go through calcs, and he has to do his analysis, and so in the meantime, while that's taking place, we're recouping those drought charges for those excessive users who continue to violate our conservation measures. That would be my suggestion.
So I would just like to add that if you look at the different options, I know it doesn't look like very much water in the scope of things. It really doesn't. And that's mostly because we missed some of our best months to really, you know, hit super hard on it, right? But you still need to think about that every single acre foot is potentially $2,000 saved. So yes, I know 190 does not look like a lot, but it's $380,000 that you don't have to pass on to ratepayers. So it's like it becomes significant.
And they're conserving and not being charged for that additional water they're using as well.
That's the theory.
Right.
Well, if they don't use it, they're not being charged for it.
I mean, it's a
But
direct charge, so it's your usage is measured through your meter. You're only getting charged whatever flows through your meter, so essentially, you know, with the exception of that give or take 2% error rate that we face, due to just technical difficulties, you're gonna have pretty good accuracy.
So for those that are saving, that has our lawns like desert, but how much more are they gonna pay?
How much are they gonna pay?
Yeah, the ones that they're on the same plan that are saving, they are doing the whole, what is it right now? 1 day?
It's 2 days a week right
2 days
now.
a week. So if they continue that,
If there's a, it depends on how we structure the surcharge or drought charge, however we want to coin it.
Okay.
And then when the rate structure goes into effect for tiered, most likely if they're conserving to that level, they may not hit a certain tier. So they may see a slight increase,
Yeah, so-
but they may not see that big increase for folks that are using 30, 40, 50,000 gallons a month.
oh, okay. So
you know,
so
keeping their
then,
green
the ones that are
lawns.
saving are good.
So the purpose of a tiered system is that you're rewarding, essentially those who are the, population who are conservationists or conserving water. And it's a tier, so like, you know, you're here, you're using the minimum amount, you're getting charged at the lower rate. The higher you go up, it's a staggered penalty system, kind of like first offense is 100, second is 300, third offense is 500, so it grows.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of what.
There's 2,100 gallons a month. Is that a lot?
21,000?
21,000.
That's about 7,000 over the average in the summertime. So a little bit high.
Hey, Mary?
Yeah. No, you're good. I mean,
You're gonna have to get an extension.
Since this is a repeat of last year, basically, is there going to be any sort of consideration for families that may have 8 or 9 people in it? Because 2 people can get by, whereas 8 people, they're never gonna get by with that limit of water. So what can you do to make it more equitable?
Well, don't you kind of do that already with the,
Well, if we institute a similar drought charge, it's probably gonna be simplified quite significantly. I know last year we really tried to detail it, but conveying the message was a little bit more difficult than we anticipated. But in terms of the way we'd look at it, we'd have to analyze how we would wanna bring that kind of charge back, if we decide to do that, and whether or not it triggers 218 or whether it's something we can just bring back and adopt as a drought charge. So that's something we'll have to look at in terms of how we do it. It may be where we set a baseline for a typical, I mean, and it's hard because a typical family is not a family of 9, right? So, I mean, are there anomalies? Are there situations where the council can say, hey, someone can petition for it and show that some,
Yeah, that would
we have
be
9
fair.
people? That's up to the council to decide. It may be few, but typically you're looking at what the average household is, because when we look at how we charge a drought charge, we gotta look at what the Bureau looks at for our public health and safety, and it's based on population. So if it's 55 gallons per person per day, and you're looking at, 9 people, then multiply that by 9 times 365. So you can kind of figure it, but I think the reality is looking at what our baseline usage, and then there'd be maybe a surcharge above that. And so we can definitely bring that back. If the council's interested in entertaining that, staff can prepare some scenarios in terms of what that would look like. Also, I think if anything tonight is it's important to establish, if we're gonna establish any watering restrictions and further reduce the water restrictions. So whether that means, hey, we're just gonna go to 1 day a week and we're gonna send letters out to the big water users and let them know, hey, your ornamental turf should not be watered. And so I think that's something we have to make a decision, hopefully the council can consider and then provide direction from you guys in terms of moving forward with, do we want to entertain a drought charge? Do we want to look into this so we can institute it as soon as possible to capture the time where people are watering? Because doing it in the middle of the winter is not really going to produce a lot of savings.
But in a quick statement, oh, go ahead, you got a question? Go ahead. Or a statement.
Scott Netherton, 424 College. Like Mary said, how does the city know how many? I have 7 at my house. Next month, I'm going to have 8. Going to be a granddad. I'm adding to our capita, so we're going to get more money for the city, but it's going to cost me more in water with a baby on the way. So if you think I only have 3 people living there and I get 55 gallons a day or a month per person, when I really have 7 living there, how do you know if I'm excessive or not, is my question.
Because I believe the way we did it last time, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it was your usage is what it is. We're not going to go ask people how many people live there, because everybody's going to say 9 or 10 just to get more water. So wherever you was at, what do you say, the same time last year is how you base it.
Yeah.
If you had 7 there, you're good.
You're still
8,
there.
yeah.
Well, and I think one thing to really kind of look at is when we look at the water usage, 70%, and that may be an underestimate, of water usage is outdoor use. So whether you have, 5 or 9 people in your household, it's really nominal compared to how much water you use outside. So, because you think about it, I don't have a calculator, Larry probably has it, but 55 gallons per person per day. So that's 1,600, yeah, so 1,600 per person. And so you're still probably, if you had no outdoor watering, you're probably right around, still within the average. So it's really the outdoor watering. That's why every time we have a drought, we're always addressing the outdoor watering. I see it in my smart meter. Like, when the water's going outside, it's going high, but then when I'm not on the non-watering days, it's low. You use staggering amounts of difference in water because of outdoor use. And I think that's really, really where the difference is addressing, having a couple people difference is not gonna make a huge difference in the overall picture, right? So I think that's really where we focus on is the outdoor, because we have to get the big bang for our buck in terms of the usage, so.
Is the pool moratorium still in? Because I see posts all over Facebook about
That's gone
pool
now.
contractors coming.
Yep.
So that is gone? The pool moratorium is
It,
gone?
it went away, yeah. It went
It
away
went
in
away.
May, I think.
And then, one other thing, I don't know how car washes work as far as their water, if it's recycled, how it's done, but I know we're getting a new gas station that's gonna have a new car wash. The last thing we wanna do is keep businesses from coming, but, under the circumstances, is that something we wanna be spending?
They recycle a lot of that water, though.
Yeah,
Okay, so you're washing your car with the dirty water from the car before?
It's
It's coming
recycled.
from somewhere, right?
It's dirty waters and soap.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so.
It's like an osmosis, kind of like a triple osmosis
They treat
generation.
It's
fully
treated,
treated,
yeah.
is it?
Yeah, that's why like when you're at Chevron, you smell it, it's because it's been treated quite a few times and then they inject some fresh water in there to.
Okay, but the pool moratorium's over? So
Yeah, so pool permits you're able to get
Are
pool
you?
permits,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, tonight, so what do you want tonight from us?
So
What option?
what option you guys want, and if you guys want to kind of manipulate that option, so.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I'm looking at option 3. I'm 3 all the way. I'm 3.
well, that's basically no irrigation of turf, 1 day per week.
I say
And-
option 1.
And option 1 is 1 day a week.
We can always go up, but we can't come back.
Which is middle of two.
And let me add something, because this is the reason why I have an option 2 and option 3 is really comes in enforcement. So I put front yards because it's very difficult to enforce in the backyard, because you can't be looking over people's fences, and so it's very difficult to be able to enforce if people are watering in their backyard. So, you try to put in the restrictions, but whether or not it's enforceable or you're capable of enforcing it, that can be a challenge as well. And so that's really the big difference between 2 and 3 is really just restricting the outdoor turf, and then 1 obviously is just restricting the 1 day a week.
For the apartments, is there a way that they could get a governmental thing so they could put turf? Because there's a lot of apartments that they're watering a bald spot, and it happens during the night. I'm in front of a rain, and I could hear it from my room with all that water going down there.
And that's just, and that's coupled with stepping up our enforcement. If we go to the change and making these changes, is holding them accountable for it, going and talking with them, and when we see it, let us know. And then we can contact them and let them know. Obviously, we're in a warning phase to get that message out. Typically, the warning will curb that approach, but typically if they don't change anything, then you're going back and double checking to make sure that they made some changes to the way they're watering. And it also includes water going down the gutter, all of those things, and then curbing that. And so really it depends on what how far the council wants to go in terms of conservation efforts.
And once again, just getting on the wagon of Mr. Singleton from the past, this is not us. This is because the state is just, we have no water. We have no water. And if these ordinances and things that we're gonna do, we're doing it for the best of our health now. It's the best for our health, not the best for our lawn health. So once again, to the public, it's time to start, brainstorming and doing whatever they can to conserve water. We're very lenient on giving the high rates money back, and now I think it's our turn to, be the strict parent. So,
Okay, do we have a motion? Anybody? For an option?
I'll make a motion for number 2.
Is there a second? Huh?
I'll second it.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Councilman Ramirez,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Singleton,
Only because I like you, Manny. Aye.
Councilman Horn,
Aye.
Councilman Atkinson,
Aye.
Mayor Ramsey.
No. I think it's too much, too fast.
You have resolution 2, Sean?
Yeah, the resolution is there in option 2, which is 1 day a week, so no irrigation of turf in the front yard.
Until the resolution's over. In fact, we're saying basically, don't come to Coalinga because you're gonna blow away.
The resolution is also to buy water, right?
Yes.
So is that the same one they're voting?
Yes, it's on the resolution,
You go to
yes.
the state capitol, they got green grass, don't they? Isn't that ornamental grass? Same thing, right? They can do it, but why can't we? I'm sorry. Not right. What do we have to go all the way down to Coalinga to make them have great yards? It's not fair.
And this is out to the public. When you go voting, you gotta go and point your finger at Sacramento.
Well, they're gonna be voting.
Oh, yeah.
They're gonna be voting at you guys, because you're making these decisions.
Well, yeah.
sorry, I'm not gonna be out there anymore.
No, I know.
But they're gonna be voting for you guys. I mean, you're not gonna be voting either, but it's gonna be other people that's gonna be on the deal right now, guys.
I
You
still,
gotta think about their houses in this town too.
We also got to think about what's costs to the city. I mean, that's what we're trying to protect as the city. And when we're talking about $2.5 million of potential extra cost, we got to start thinking, how much
Okay,
is the
yeah.
lawn worth?
You
Well, it
think
doesn't matter.
about
Wait. We already voted on it.
I know. But you think about it, what people are gonna look at. We've got a $4 million reserve too, and then we're turning it around and doing this to them. I'm sorry.
I think everybody shares the same frustration. We are looking like we're gonna run out of water September 15th, and we are going to try to purchase additional water, but there may not be water for sale. And so that is a whole separate issue. Yes, if we purchase additional water, it's gonna be very, very, very expensive, but there may not even be any to purchase. And so if we continue drawing water from the canal, we're essentially taking water that is not ours, which is then setting the community up for a whole nother set of issues.
And we're not the only city that's in this problem.
I mean, if somebody's gonna vote me out because, you know, they want their yard green, that's not kinda like the right way. I mean, my yard, I hate going outside with my flip-flops and getting all that dust in my toes, so, I mean, I'm doing it, and I have a pretty big front yard, and I have a big, nice tree, but that tree doesn't get water. That tree gets a 2-liter water with a little dripper, and, I mean, that's all it gets, and it's, I mean, it's,
I've already cut 5 trees down.
yeah, I mean,
But it's like we complain how the state flushes water out for a fish and doesn't look at the people, but we're trying to look at the people, not the yard. In time, if we can ever bring this back and lift it, that's fine, but we don't want to wait till September, October, and we have nothing. I mean, no water's coming out. Like they said, water will be there, but who are we pulling from? I mean, so we have to be responsible to say, we're at this level, not because of what we want to do. We don't want people to have dead yards. We don't want that. But if we don't fix it now, when we get to that doorway and there's no water, then we're going to be the ones looked at, because we're the ones sitting up here making the decision saying, keep watering. 2 days a week, it's cool, but you have to. We already set ourselves back because we stopped charging for the excessive use. We would have been in a whole different bracket if we hadn't stopped that, but we voted to stop it. So now, at some point in time, you have to make that tough decision. And if I get voted out because of the decision, I'm cool with that. I'm totally cool with that, because I'm not here for me. I could afford whatever restriction the city, state puts on me, but everybody can't, because we need water just to wash ourselves up. So, I mean, I hear what you're saying 100%. I don't like my yard looking like that, but it's a sacrifice I'm willing to do for the community, for the city. We want water to wash, then hey, let's see if we can buy some water. But we have to start somewhere. We can't wait till it's too late.
I just see it in another way too, where I'd rather give up my watering lawn to a recreational where a kid could go and play and bounce a ball and play football in a bowl or a practice field or anything like that. I mean, I'm frustrated too, and you know, that, I'm with Ramsey. Why is Sacramento having all these people green it is frustrating. It is frustrating. You know, I don't like to see my yard. I have pictures where it used to be beautiful, nice, St. Augustine, like nice grass and everything, and now it's just a dirt where I just even it out because there's nothing, and it's, I mean, it really, it's really.
Okay, gentlemen, I apologize for getting so upset, but the vote was counted, so I'm going to accept the vote, so.
Is there a way that we could, again, my imagination, block when that creek is running, to block some water where we could get that dirty water and we could put it on those fields?
We have nowhere
On
to
the
put
the
it.
fields, like if you, yeah, it is county, but if we talk to county, I mean, that creek does run, and those 2 creeks do run, even if
That's
there's
that's not on the agenda, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. Okay, city manager's report?
Thank you. I just wanted to thank city staff and the community for a wonderful National Night Out. We couldn't do it without the city staff's support and the support of our local businesses and community organizations that came out. And then also, Councilman Ramirez had asked for a future agenda item on information regarding Los Gatos Park. And I just wanted you to know I didn't forget about it. I've been back and forth with the county supervisor's office, and I'm just waiting on a final response, and then I'll have that on a future agenda.
Okay, any council members' reports?
Oh, National Night Out went out pretty good. We had they gave away pretty much everything and ran out of stuff. There was so many kids that actually showed up. So it was a good, well, it was a band playing too. But it was a good it was definitely a good turnout. A little bit different because they didn't do any dancing and stuff this year, but it was a pretty good turnout.
The mayor asked how many school supplies were handed out. So we had 425 sets, and this is the first year that it's really happened where we ran out, and so that was very difficult. Last year we had 400 sets and we had about 13 left over, and so we planned for 425 this year in case more students showed up, and we probably had about 100 that we had to turn away. So next year we're gonna seek more donations to try to increase that number.
Okay, thank you. Amir doesn't have any announcements. I just wanted to ask one question. When does this take an effect, this ordinance? I'm sorry to bring it up again, but.
Immediately.
So it starts today? Okay.
We'll provide some information to make sure people are aware of it. It's not gonna be, there's warnings
Right.
issued, yeah, but
Right.
resolution's effective immediately.
But I wanted to put that out there a little bit so everybody would know too.
Can I just add one thing to that? This resolution means absolutely nothing without proper enforcement. What are we gonna do to enforce this? And two, every single meeting, I'd like to see what we have done as far as warning, citations, you know, et cetera, et cetera. I want that presented to council at every single meeting that we have from here on out to make sure that city staff and our different departments are actually enforcing this, because it really means nothing without enforcement.
Okay. Any other future agenda items?
Yeah, I want to bring the moratorium back, discuss on the swimming pools. And also, there's a bunch of streets around town where the gutter meets the pavement, or the pavement, the asphalt, and it's deteriorating out, and there's dirt actually showing. There's actually chunks of asphalt in certain parts of town where it's getting flung out just from the street sweeper. So is there any way that we can at least have some of those patched?
Just report where it's at. I think we have an app that actually does that.
Yeah, I mean, we're aware of a lot of those. Unfortunately, our staffing is extremely low, and to put together a crew to do what we call dig outs on those particular areas, they're on our radar. It's just with our staff right now, especially, it's very challenging to do a lot of these additional projects, but they are on our radar, and we're working diligently to try to address those. But if you have specific ones, let us know, and we can take a look at them. And we have done some, like I think we did Monterey a long time ago. But yeah, these are full day projects to go in there. We do have a new paver on the way, so that's gonna help with trying to make these types of projects a little bit more efficient too.
Yeah, I know some along Polk Street right there, between Elm and Monterey. Some of those are gonna be repaired anyways when they actually do the street repair.
Yeah, they're gonna
But
fully
the
reconstruct
off
the street.
streets that are off of that, as they turn the corners is where the damage is happening.
A lot of
And then,
times they'll
course-
transition on the paving, they'll
Yeah.
transition into that street, so it's not like they just cut straight through.
Right.
They usually transition for the crown.
For the edge
Okay,
of the gutter.
next we'll go, if there's no other future agenda items, we'll go into closed session. We have 2 items. Is there gonna be any statements afterwards?
No, and I think that the one that was continued from earlier is not gonna occur.
Oh, the meeting?
From the special meetings. We'll just have the
Okay.
2 on the regular agenda.
Okay. All right, then. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you for coming.